Good morning, good evening. Welcome to week 3 of MPAI 600 here at Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies Applied Intelligence Program. Let me just start off with announcements. There we go. Again, please keep up the effort as we go forward. Again, I liked what I saw in discussion 2, but please watch these videos. I mentioned in last week's video to apply the confessions case study in this week, and many of you did not do that in the discussion board. So watch these videos, take them to heart. They're part of the curriculum. I'd also add that where I am working, there is a defense threat reduction agency. They're hiring interns. They're generally geared at the GS3 to 7 level, which, really, if you're fresh from undergrad, they'd probably be a good way to get into the agency. So if you're interested, just let me know, and I can send you the link to apply online. I think it closes either 1 March or 1 April. So you've got some time, but I just want to make people cognizant of it. So current events, Richmond. If you're not following the news closely, especially if you're outside of Virginia, they're expecting the Martin Luther King Day demonstrations to be filled with not nice people, to put it mildly. These include white nationalists, real big gun enthusiasts, and we've declared martial law, or Virginia has declared not martial law, but a state of emergency, and have forbidden open displays of assault weapons for this demonstration. I'm not going to get into the guns, no guns, politics behind that, but I will get on and say Charlottesville, for those of you who remember in 2017, was an intelligence failure. The Virginia State Fusion Center and the state police thought that Charlottesville was just going to be your run-of-the-mill racists, for lack of a better term, not the hardcore racists and white nationalists and armed demonstrators and militia members, and then you had the anti-protesters. They didn't anticipate that this was going to be a whole hotbed of issues, and therefore they were not prepared. Charlottesville police had a very, very minimal presence. There was no Virginia state assets out there, and I don't want to say the galling part, but what makes this an intelligence failure is a reporter was able to analyze how big this was going to be just using Facebook posts and Twitter and other social media. And the reporter understood that the people coming, and they'd come to several rallies beforehand, weren't just your fraternity brother, suit and tie white nationalists, for lack of a better term. That these were actually violent criminals, essentially showing up. So I suspect, and regardless of what you think about the politics, I suspect the Virginia Fusion Center got their act together this time, and they used open source tools and other intel methods to predict that this is going to be a very potentially violent rally, and and this allowed the governor to make certain decisions. Regardless of what you think about the politics, that's what intel is. It's trying to use these, the information that's already out there or new collection methods to drive a decision to mitigate risk. This is what the basics of what's going on. I think, well, when you watch this recording, we will have more information on what happens. But now the Virginia Fusion Center and the Richmond Police and the Virginia State Police are a lot more prepared for what might happen coming forward, and they can even hand out BOLO list, which is be on the lookout for this guy who's been at 8 rallies and totes an AR-15. Be on the lookout for him. Be on the lookout for this person. He's a real troublemaker. So we'll see how that turns out. Probably you'll have an answer when you watch this, but that's just intel working the process well. So review of last week. Again, we talked about requirements. You integrated it into the collection plan. Hopefully you've finished your collection plan by the time you've watched this, and I'll have that information back to you today or by the end of the week. And then you saw the intelligence traps. Again, some key issues: confirmation bias. You saw that in the CIA handout. Mirror imaging, where we're basing decisions based on how we see the world. I see that daily, whether we're analyzing Korea, China, or Russia. We have a viewpoint on the world that may not be the same as if you're a hierarchical dictator like Putin or Xi Jinping in China. And then finally, the confessions. I think this was the case study. I really showed some of those intel traps, and I think some of you highlighted them pretty well. Classic confirmation bias. You think one thing, and every piece of information feeds into that, and all other contrary information is denied. And you saw that they came to the one conclusion, and they brought it to a ridiculous level in this case. And then there's a couple other things. I should have put vividness bias as well. The jury playing those confessions was a lot more vivid and a lot more of an impact than all the DNA evidence and all the other scientific data that was out there. So you saw that kind of play out as well. And the third thing is negative evidence. As you saw in the guide, negative evidence is when you ask the question, let's find this person guilty. You didn't ask the question, if he is guilty, what else should we be seeing? And if the first guy was guilty, we should also be seeing DNA evidence, we should be seeing motive, we would be seeing opportunity, and all those other things. But that negative evidence was dismissed in favor of, we got the confession, we've confirmed that he is guilty, let's put him away. So again, all those biases were on display. And I had a student bring this up last semester. I think it's worthy of bringing up or considering. Biases, good people suffer biases. Good people suffer biases, but Detective Ford, in this case, was a bad person. He was an evil person. So this went beyond just normal cognitive biases to criminal activity. I could see that viewpoint, but I could also see the viewpoint that we could all be Detective Fords. Given our own biases, given the pressures of certain situations, we will all fudge the paperwork. We will all do things that are if not criminal in nature, go right up to the line in order to satisfy our bosses, in order to keep our jobs, whatever the reason is. So I'll let you decide. And then I just want to bring up the Georgetown values. I don't know if anyone in this class is Jesuit or Catholic or religious or really cares, but they try and install some sort of idea of justice in this curriculum, and you saw a gross miscue of justice here. And you could all blame it on Detective Ford, but I'll remind you that it was the detective, it was prosecutors, it was juries, it was appellate court judges, it was all the way up to the governor's office. All were plagued by this lack of empathy and this lack of understanding. Hopefully, when we're in this program, you develop a little bit of understanding of an ethical purpose to what you're doing, and you could apply it into your day-to-day jobs. And then if you want to just know, this case was not solved until last year. When I say resolved, I mean the final lawsuits. So if you didn't see it in the documentary, but they were released, and then their records were expunged, so they're no longer on the sexual predators list. But then their lawsuits finally from the state and the Norfolk municipality were finally settled just last year at the end of 2018. So this was an injustice that happened over 20 years. So week 3 preview, we start going into our case studies. This one is strategic surprise. So 2 old case studies, Pearl Harbor and the Yom Kippur War. And ask, what were the failures? And, we talked about the collection cycle, and that's not going to go away. So where in the collection cycle was the failure occurred? Did it happen at the beginning with collection? Did it happen when raw information was passed to analysis? Did it get when they're doing? Did the information get skewed when it was briefed to policymakers or military leaders? Did all the information get right, but the policymakers failed to act? And then finally, were there underlying circumstances? Just bad luck, bad stuff just sometimes happens, and that's what caused these failures. So where was the failure along the chain? And when you say Intel failure, it's actually quite unique that we don't have more Intel failures. For in order Intel to be a success, all those factors that I just bulletized here, collection analysis, policy, etc., you have to get it all right for there to be a success. Arguably, and again, I'm doing this before Richmond happened, there will be a success because all these facets, from the collection of information to the governor acting, succeeded. Hopefully, cross your fingers on that one. And then the readings, documentaries, Dalit Intelligence Surprise Attack, the Yom Kippur article, and then finally Al Jazeera, The Crossing. You only have to really see the first 30 minutes of the documentary. It's an hour-long documentary to get the understanding of the Intel failure related to the Yom Kippur War. So if there's questions or issues, let me know, and I look forward to your discussion posts.